Hey everybody, today Rahdo runs through a prototype of Winterborne, which is a deck building game where 2 to 4 players are trying to build up their civilization while also building up their deck. And the way it works is, on your turn, you're going to have a hand of 4 cards. Let's see what I start out with here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now, I'm going to use these cards in one of 3 different ways. I can use them to trigger one of my characters to move, or I could use them to say, hey, character who's ready to move, this is how far you move, or I can use them for some other effect, like a wild effect in the case of this one. And how am I going to use them? Well, that depends on how I want to leverage the strengths of my shaman, my warrior, and my explorer, who start out here on this little mini-map. Every player has one of these that symbolically represents the big world of provinces. Each one of these provinces has 3 elements to it. It has a card that can be got through exploration, or it has cards that can be gotten through trade, or it has spoils that can be gotten through invasion. And as you might imagine, my warrior's good for invading, my explorer is good for exploring, and my shaman is good for engaging in trade, as well as other stuff. Everybody has this other board where they have an at-a-glance summary of what their characters can do. Here's all the buildings we could build after we conquer land and start building up our society. And each player, as part of our setup, gets a random Winterborne power, which represents 2 things that they can do, but only near the end of the game when we reach winter. The game takes place over 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And when we get to winter, this is when we will use all of the power we've accrued over the course of the game for our cool Winterborne powers. Anyway, though, back to my hand. What am I going to do? Let's see here. Well, I start with 1 measly gold, which is not very much, but I could turn that gold into something else, let's say, by having my shaman. Actually, I can move any of my characters. I can move my warrior, my shaman, or my explorer. Let's move my shaman. So I'm going to play this card. And how far is he going to move? 1 or 3 spaces? Shoot. Alrighty. No, I want him to move 2 spaces, because what I wanted him to do was, I want him to go 1, 2, so that he can land over here. This would represent that he's left the green province and moved over to the yellow province, because he went 1, 2. Because over here in the yellow province, there's a trade opportunity. Give 1 of any resource to get 2 military. I would love my shaman to come over here, give up my 1 starting gold, and get 2 military to start that going. But I can only move him 1 or 3 spaces, which means he would move here, or 1, 2, 3, here, which means he could get access to this trade opportunity, which is food for military. I don't have any food. Or this opportunity, convert 2 resources into a banner, which isn't going to help me much right now. Okay, so let's see here. All right, well, if I'm going to move him 1 space, all right, then I know what I'm going to do instead. I am going to move my explorer, which means, okay, I'm jettisoning this wild opportunity. I'm jettisoning this movement. I'm going to move my explorer here. I'll move him 2 steps. Alrighty. So I'm giving up the opportunity just to get a coin off of this. Although I'd rather get a coin. You know what? No, I'm going to move him 3 steps, which means I'm not going to be able to move my warrior with this card, and I'm not going to be able to use the wild ability of this card. So I played these 2 cards to move my explorer 3 steps. 1, 2, 3, and now that means he's left the black district and he's over here at the purple district, where if he could explore, he could discover this wilds card, which is really, really awesome. Wilds cards don't go into your hand like normal, which is interesting. Unlike most deck builders, when you get a card, it doesn't go into your discard pile, it goes directly in your hand. You could use it right away. Wild cards have this little scroll on them, which means they come over here into your reserve. You can see you can have up to 3 cards in your reserve, and that means you can use them anytime you play a card with the wild symbol. Alrighty, but I'm not going to explore, because to explore requires me spending 2 resources of my choice in spring. Later in the game, as we go into fall and autumn and all that, it gets more and more expensive, more difficult to explore. The early game it's easy, but still I can't explore because I only have 1 resource. So the other thing an explorer can do besides exploring and grabbing cards and building your deck is raiding, which means I'm going to gain 2 food. All right, so that was half my turnover. I've used 2 of my 4 cards. I've got 2 more. And now I could use these cards simply to get some money and some military strength, which means my warrior in a future turn will be able to go out and conquer and build and whatnot. So I could play these for that, but instead I'm going to move back. I'm going to have my shaman move 1 space. So I'm playing these 2 cards to have my shaman move 1, and he's going to come over here and join my explorer because they don't block each other. So now you can imagine both my explorer and my shaman are up here in the purple district. And remember I was saying I could engage in trade. I need 1 food to get 1 military here. So I will spend the food to get the military. We have engaged in trade with the purple region, which means at the end of the game, I'm going to score a victory point for every 2 houses I get built. So now that I've got this, I'm going to want to be building like crazy for the rest of the game. So I've got some, I've converted stuff, and I've got some points for the end of the game. And I'll just keep this as a reminder that I have successfully engaged in trade. Hooray. Now, instead, my shaman, when he moved over here, instead of engaging in trade, he could have taxed the people of the purple district, which means I would have gotten 1 money and 1 military, which also I could have gotten by just playing the 2 cards directly. But I also got him to move into position. Or instead, he could have prayed. That's the other thing shaman can do. Wherever they go, they can pray, which gives me a favor token. These can be very powerful, especially in winter near the end of the game, because I need these favor tokens for the final stages of the game to use my cool special Winterborne powers. Like the one I got randomly in this game, either I can take spoils from anywhere on any province. I can just grab them, and that could be a huge benefit because these spoils, well, there's 2 types. There's ones that stand in for cards. Like this spoil, if I have it, I can use it instead of playing a card to move a character 3 spaces. Or if I have this spoil, I can use it instead of a card to get my explorer ready to move. So if I get these spoils, it's like I've got a bigger hand that I can use whenever I want. Also, there's these spoils, which kind of represent me having conquered more terrain, again, for the purposes of in-game scoring. And if, near the end of the game, I'm trying to get a particular thing and I can't get my warrior in the right position to grab that spoil till I want, hey, I could use my special power because I've saved up some favors. And the other special power I've got is to swap an exploration card from my hand with any. So later in the game, remember, you get these exploration cards, they go in your deck or they go in your reserve. And near the end of the game, I might not have a use for a card and I desperately want some other one. I might not need this treasure anymore. I'm done using it. And instead I want to get this banner because it's one that gives me victory points for all the treasures I've gotten throughout the game. And I want to grab that. I can't get my explorer into position because in winter, it's very expensive to explore. But hey, if I'm going to make that move, at least I can put the stuff in the right position. Or I don't need to explore. I can just grab them off the board and get rid of something I don't want. So these Winterborne powers are super powerful at the end of the game, which is why during the game you want to save up favors. Although occasionally you can use these favors for other things as well. Like, say, engaging in trade. These people want me to give up a favor to get some military. And then they would be worth a point, etc., etc. So anyway, that was it. That was my turn. I played all 4 cards. I moved 2 of my characters. There was a little bit of synergy between them. And now, at the end of my turn, if I had any cards that I had not played, I could either hold them for the next round or I could discard them. And then I am going to draw back up to 4. So here's my other 2. And I got to shuffle these and draw 2 more. Okay. And my turn is done. Now it would be somebody else's turn. They would be doing the same stuff on their own little mini version of the board that represents them traveling around on the board and taking advantage of all the different things that are out there. So let's say now it comes back around to me. It's my turn again. And hey, you know what? I would like to start deck building. So I could move my explorer either 1 or 2 steps, or if I play this card to move my explorer, I can move 3 steps. And now I have some resources, so I could afford to spend those resources to explore. So remember, he's over here. So if I have him go 1, he can get to here, or here, or here. Which of these cards would I like to add to my deck? Provisions, treasure, or weapons? Right, and so the weapons, when I explore with this card, instead of, right now, I'm going to explore with one of these cards, but if I have this in my hand, I explore with this card, I can take an exploration card from anywhere, not just where I'm stuck. So that gives me a lot more flexibility. If I get this provision, if I use this to move my explorer, every time I move him, I get an extra food, whether I raid or not. Wow, that's really nice. Or if I take this treasure, whenever I conquer using my military guy with this card, I can take spoils from anywhere. I'm not limited. I actually really like that provision. I just want to get some free food for the rest of the game. So I am going to have my explorer move 1 step and Boom, he's going to come down here and join my warrior down here in the yellow province. And now he is going to, before you saw him raid, get 2 food, now he is going to explore, take the exploration card, or the exploration card there. Now, the cost for exploration is reminded on this sideboard, which is also the timer for the game. As part of setup, we build a deck of cards that are going to be added and fed into the game as we build our decks. Once all these cards are out of the spring, we move on to summer, and then autumn, and then finally winter. And in spring, I can use any resources I want. But when we get to summer, I have to spend gold and food. My explorers are hungry and they're greedy. When we get into autumn, though, they're greedy, but they want protection. So I need to use military for them to explore because it's getting tougher out there. And at the end of the game, when we get to winter, I need to spend all 3 resources to explore. So I want to explore earlier than later before it gets more expensive. Alrighty, so I have moved him over here. I'm going to explore any 2 resources. I will give up the food, because I'm going to start getting food with this provision card, and I will give up the gold. All right, and I have added this, not to my discard pile, but to my hand immediately. Okay, and so my turn's not over, but there's now an empty space. At the end of my turn, I am going to take the top card from the spring deck and add it back here, and that's how the timer works. The more we build our deck, the faster the game winds down. So I'm not done. I think I'll use this provision to have my guy go out, and let's see, I can have him move 2 spaces or 2 spaces. I'll play these 2. I'm going to have my explorer move 2 spaces. Boop, boop. So now he's over here in the black province, and as it says, when I use this, when I use this card to move an explorer, get a food, hey, I just picked up some food. And now that I'm over here, I could raid and get some more food, or I could spend 2 resources and get a weapon card. Hooray! Okay, pretty nice. Now, this weapon card is interesting because it's got this little scroll here. That means it can be in my hand, or I can keep it over here in my reserve, where I can have up to 3 scroll cards. So this is like expanding my hand size. Normally my hand size is 4, but as long as I don't use this weapon, my hand size is effectively 5. It sits over here waiting to be used. And what does it do? When I explore with this card, take an exploration card from any province. All right, so that's pretty cool. I think I'm going to save that for a while. I've got 1 more card in my hand. 1 card by itself isn't going to be able to move anybody. I could say, hey, somebody move or move. But so instead, I'm just going to play this and get that gold coin back. And I'm right back to where I started, except I have added 2 cards to my deck, 2 very powerful, useful cards, and one of them sits here in my reserve. Plus, I've also engaged in trade. So at the end of my turn, I'm going to draw back up, 1, 2, and hopefully I'll find my provisions. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2. And, oh, I didn't get my provisions. And also at the end of my turn, we refill these areas. And hey, here's another treasure card. And here's another banner. Now, banners are interesting. 1, because they have negative movement, which means if I have this banner and I use it to move my shaman, I can move him clockwise or counterclockwise instead of clockwise. So they give me more flexibility. Plus, and that's all they do, they let you move, but at the end of the game, they give you points for stuff. In this case, I get a point for every provision card I've collected if I have this banner. So if I get that, I might want to keep an eye out for more provisions so I can rack things up really, really quickly. This one is a banner. Let's move -1 and gives me a point for every treasure I've collected at the end of the game. So if I get one of these banners, you better believe I want to really kind of focus on that type of exploration card that I can grab. Although there's a downside to it as well, because at the end of the game, there are huge points to be had for having sets of unique type of cards. Instead of specializing in just treasure or just provisions or just weapons, if I get, for every set of 4 unique type of cards I get, that's 10 points. So, the banners, they focus you in one way, but they kind of, step away from another way you can score lots of points. Alrighty, so anyway, that was a pretty successful turn, and now, I could move my warrior twice, but unfortunately my warrior, who can conquer, he needs money and military to do that. To build, he needs money and food. I got the money, I do not have the military, but you know what? I could just go on ahead and play this card really quick by itself to get 1 military. Boop! And now, what the heck? Let's have my warrior move 2 spaces. I'll have him move 2 spaces. Alrighty, here you go. 1, 2. He comes over here, so he is in the black region. And warriors have a choice. They can either conquer, which means they take one of these tiles and add it to their map and start to customize their map, Or they can build, which requires food and money. You got to pay them and you got to feed them to build these houses, which can be worth lots of points at the end of the game. There's a combinatorial. The number of provinces you have times the number of buildings you've built, that can add up to quite a bit. Alrighty, so I don't have any food, so I'm going to have him conquer, which means I got to pay him and I've got to use his military strength of the warrior to conquer over here. Which means I take one of these black tiles and I can put it here or here next to where he is. I'll put it right here. And now what that means is in the future, if I have my warrior, my shaman, or my explorer land in this space, they have access to the resources of the blue district and the black district. Plus, this is now 2 places that I could actually build a house. And as well, if I ever do build a house here and my shaman passes over it, as he travels by, he taxes them and takes money. Yeah, takes money. So there's a lot of opportunities that appear over the course of the game. The more I conquer, the more I build, the more I deck build, the more I pray to get these for the end game, and so on. And that, folks, is just a quick rundown of the gameplay of Winterborne, which is a very clever game. There is a lot going on. And in fact, with Jen, I found it's almost too much going on. Jen really started getting some big AP, analysis paralysis issues because, as you might imagine, every turn you've got 4 cards in your hand, plus potentially extra cards that are in your reserve, plus these spoils that act as cards. So every turn you have a lot of stuff you can do. So once you figure out what you can do, you can have really big, powerful turns and build up your deck, build up your empire, score lots of points in lots of different ways. But like I said, this is a very analytical, heavy, centric deck builder, much more so than most, because there are so many opportunities popping up all over the place, so many different ways to score points, so many different ways to use your cards to manipulate your characters. There's a lot going on. It's a very sharp design, but like I said, just know going in, it is a lot to get your head around. And that, folks, is Winterborne. Thanks for watching. Have a very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.